Steven, it's a new year, it's 2022, and I've got a big, fat, juicy wish that it's going to be a year full of fulfillment here on You Can't Disappoint a Podcast. What do you think?
I've got a big old sauce-drenched wish myself, just slapped on my plate here in front of me, and I'm going to dig in to a whole nother year of You Can't Disappoint a Podcast.
It's going to be a big year full of winding down our rewatch of Community and moving on to whatever comes next for us, and to be a part of it with us. There's so many ways to show your support.
We've got a big old warm pool here for you. Come on and slip on your skivvies and slide down the ladder and dive in. How can they get in this pool, Zach?
If you put your toe in the water and it feels fine and you want to get waist deep, come join us on Patreon, patreon.com/can'tdisappointpodcast. It's the way to support this show and to help us move it forward as we move into the future. It's also the way to get more of us every week with our live pre-show every week, You Can't Dis a Pre-Show, and all kinds of Patreon exclusive content coming all the time, Steven.
We'd love for you to support us on Patreon, but you can also hang out with us free of charge over on Twitter at You Can't Dis a Pod. We are also on Instagram at Can't Disappoint Podcast, and we're on Facebook and YouTube under the whole name of the show, You Can't Disappoint a Podcast.
Also, if you would like to be a part of the show every week, you can email us at can'tdisappointpodcast@gmail.com. To be a part of next week's podcast, write us in your trivia, your favorite funny moment, and your episode MVP for next week's episode of Community, and we'll read it out loud on the show.
If you like what we do here, leave a review wherever you leave reviews about podcasts.
Yeah, maybe like the Sharper Image product review site. Leave us a review there.
There's like a box full of sticky notes at my post office. Write a review and leave it there.
I hope you guys are jumping on board with us and you're ready to traverse 2022 with me and Steven. What do you say? Let's rip our way into another episode of You Can't Disappoint a Podcast.
Cannonball!
I'll put like a big splat.
Yeah! Clap sync. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Are we in choir now?
He does it every time, just him.
I feel like I'm back in high school.
It makes
choir.
it easier for the editing process.
Okay. Just really funny because you were like on
It
beat
did feel
with
very
it.
high school choir. That's Steven and I were in high school show choir together, and right now they're trying to get a bunch of the alumni to like come together and learn old dances and songs and perform them for a fundraiser. And that sounds like the worst thing I could ever think of.
Not my
That
jam.
sounds like traumatic as hell.
So the only thing that was great about being in high school choir and being an alumni was when they still allowed alumni to sing at candlelight processional at Epcot, because that's what our high school choir used to do.
Cool.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we would
you're
get
from that area.
Yeah, so we would get 2 free Disney tickets
That's
every
awesome.
show we performed. And then Disney realized how many alumnus were coming back because they were like, yeah, actually, we want it to be more representative of the high schools. I'm like, don't lie. Just say you don't want to give out free tickets to people who are in their 20s anymore. Like, it's fine.
I would for sure be milking that as hard as I could. Yeah, that's
Oh,
awesome.
we were.
Yeah, that's awesome. Nothing like that in Indiana.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Mm.
Steven, we're here. It's the end of season 4. It flew by so fast. Can you believe it?
You know, I walked uphill both ways to get here, Zach.
Yeah.
And somehow, things went down, things went up, things went back down, but we're here. We finally made it to our very circular, round, elliptical table in front of us. It's got a lot of shapes, but they're all curvy, that's for sure.
We're ready to have this graduation procession to move on from season 4 to season 5. It's a big transition from one big transition of the show into the next one.
Yeah.
And we've got a great panel of people to talk about it all. We're going to get right to that in a second. But we've got to start off the show by saying, hi, everyone. I'm Zach. I'm glad you found us.
Hi, I'm Steven, and I'm even gladder that you found us.
Welcome to You Can't Disappoint a Podcast. We've got a shout out at the top of the show, our $10 and up patrons over at patreon.com/can'tdisappointpodcast. Those people are Danny M. Lugo, Mary Baker Budisa, Taylor Ace, Planeswalker Prez, and Brian Thurman. We love those people a lot. And over on Patreon, every week you get You Can't Dis a Pre-Show live, you get Brokeback Bebop, our Cowboy Bebop rewatch show. You get this show early every week. It's a lot of fun, and it helps us move things along. So consider throwing us a little change if you've got the means to over on Patreon.
Spare change.
And also, every time we do one of these roundtables, it feels like a bit of a family reunion. And no family reunion would be complete without an estranged, uninvited father. And we've got to give a shout out to @Communities on Twitter, our estranged community papa, who there's no estrangement. We love him very much. We're glad for all the support he gives us and all the things that he does for the community fandom at large.
Yeah, thanks, Dad, for buying us our first little podcast Pampers all those moons ago and strapping them on nice and firm and powdering us up and sending us on our way.
Look, Steven, Community Season 4 is something that community aficionados as ourselves and our lovely guests today have a lot to say about. So let's not waste any time and let's get right into some hot Season 4 takes. It was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to get it out to the people. So everyone, here it is. I hope you enjoy it. Our Season 4 Roundtable.
Away we go!
Well, we're very excited to be joined by a great group of the friends we've made through podcasting over the last couple years to talk about Season 4 of Community, and I'm sure there's a lot to dive into. It's a pretty a heavy topic when people passionate about Community get together. Even when you're not getting together to talk about Season 4, that's like what you're going to talk about probably. Everybody has something to yell about Season 4. Hi, Steven. How you doing, man?
Hi, Zach. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to have all our friends. Who we want to introduce first? We've got, for the first time in a couple seasons, we've got Ed and Bo of the Save Greendale Committee podcast, dear friends of ours. How y'all doing? What's new with you two?
I had like a "Hey friends" loaded up in the chamber, and then I was like, "Oh no, there's going to be a slightly longer intro. I'm going to wait."
It is over, and I've lost everything.
In terms of, there's nothing like new. There's someone on a motorcycle outside right now that I guess they want to contribute. Just a lot of Destiny and Elden Ring. That's pretty much it.
Oh shit! I really want to play Elden Ring.
You don't, because it'll take over your life.
Yeah.
Every waking moment that I'm not playing Elden Ring, I'm thinking about Elden Ring or playing Destiny. It's one of the two.
It's fair.
Passing it over to Ed. Popcorn to Ed.
I don't know. I haven't not a lot of Community in my life because we haven't really been doing our podcast in the last couple months. But I've been doing the AP Bio podcast with our friends Alex and Matt. Who have probably both been on this show, I'm gonna guess, or at least you guys have been on their show or whatever. Anyway, listeners should know who they are.
They know the multiverse.
The Community Podcast multiverse. But yeah, we've been doing AP Bio. That's fun. We're on season 4 of that, but that only has 4 seasons, so we're about to be done.
That's such a gem of a show.
I'm a little embarrassed. It's a good show, but I'm a little embarrassed. I'm going to finish an AP Bio podcast before I finish season 2 of my Community podcast.
So there's 30 episodes of AP Bio. I think that's okay.
Yeah. The last 2 seasons are 8 episodes each. So, and we do 2 an episode, so it's literally been like a season a month. So,
are there plans to bring back the Save Greendale Committee, or is it kind of hung up for the time being?
There is a plan. I'll say that here. Actually, it's funny. Like a week or 2 ago, I edited an episode for the first time in a long time because I had 2 that were recorded, and it's one that you were on, Zach, from literally like
from how
9
long
months ago or something. Like I think like June or May of last year.
Wow.
It was a while ago. I lived in a different apartment.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so there is an episode ready to be posted when I feel ready to do so, and then actually follow up on it. I don't want to like post 2 episodes and then still not
disappear again. Yeah,
you know?
It's always so sad when the Community podcast friends that we make, when their shows kind of crumble and they just disappear.
Not crumble.
Jesus.
Like
Jesus
crumble
Christ.
just like cease to exist. It's just like they disappear.
And it's just like, just take
that
me
didn't
some
sound
time.
as harsh to me when I said it. Sorry to all
Look,
the
Zach, I've had some
podcast.
shit going on in my
ashes.
life. Like a lot has crumbled in my life, I'll say, but not my podcast.
Well, yeah, I wasn't putting that on yours. I'm saying I would hate to see that happen to y'all.
No. I mean the other podcast.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Not yours.
Okay, so I'm just going to take a big step away from that. We've also got Jenn from the Community Rewatch Podcast with us today. Very glad to have you back.
Is my podcast also crumbling?
From a non-crumbling
Well, that's up to you. Are you doing it?
Ruin?
What's new with your show?
Have you done an episode today, Jenn?
No. I actually joked recently that I'm like, eventually we'll get to season 5. So we're doing Mythic Quest at this point as of this recording. So we've been so excited, though. Chelsea and I have really been excited because we've gotten a chance to reconnect with some of our podcasting friends, even from Community. So Michael and Jillian from Welcome to Greendale were just on an episode. Awesome. And we've gotten to have some new guests this season, and we have some returning friends, which I'm super excited about.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, we love talking about Mythic Quest Season 2, and so thankfully Seasons 3 and 4 are happening, so...
That's awesome.
It's going to turn into a Mythic Quest rewatch podcast is what's happening.
That's awesome.
That is the question, isn't it, for each of us? So what do we do once Community ends? We all hopped on Community while it was real hot. Yeah?
We have a plan. Yeah, I think we're going to do, we're just going to spiral into kind of rewatching a rewatch podcast, if you will, of just other things. And so nice. I think Schitt's Creek is first up on the agenda.
Haven't gotten to that one yet.
Love
gosh,
Creek.
I know.
So good.
Another solid 6-season show.
Yes, and then that one we won't. Well, I mean, that one's a little bit not as many things to go as deep into.
Sure.
But Chelsea and I have floated around the idea of in between breaks, maybe doing short mini rewatches of tragically canceled 1 season or 2 season shows.
I like that idea. There's some good ones.
Yeah.
Go On comes to mind. Do you know Go On? That's a great show.
The terrible hashtag that they had for that show, Goon.
Goon?
Because that's what it was spelled out. It was
Sean William Scott hockey movie.
It was like, did they not think about the fact that this would be the hashtag because it would be smushed together? It's fine. That one was the show where I was like, this has a very Community feel, and RIP that. I mean, definitely Single Parents we'll be talking about.
The Cape, I assume.
Yeah. The Cape, yeah.
Oh, the show that I'm like, I only know it exists because it exists in a Community reference.
Well, we watched the pilot episode of The Cape for a special we did one time, and I don't think I had so much fun doing many other things in my life than that. That was great.
It's pretty ridiculous, and it's got Keith David in it, so it's a good time.
I mean, yeah. Enlisted is one of the ones that we'll definitely do because that has Keith David also in it. Ben and Kate, Selfie. Just so many shows that didn't exist beyond a season that I'm like, I want to keep talking about this. So.
Interesting. So many of those shows that I don't know, they're not going to have a real streaming home a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Unless
I
it's
had to buy
a whole library.
some of them.
Yeah.
Like Gallivant.
So
I had to buy Gallivant.
I fucking love Gallivant.
God, I love Gallivant.
That's
so
a great
much.
show.
It is such a great show. But a lot of them
and you can't find that streaming, and it's so great.
We had a whole tragically canceled episode summer of 2020, and we were saying, so sorry, friends. Most of these aren't available for streaming, but you should purchase them if it's something that you really, really like. I purchased Go On, The Crazy Ones, and Enlisted.
Oh, is that the Robin Williams one?
Yes, the one with Robin
show.
Williams, Sarah Michelle Gellar. It was it had so many great people in it, and it was again tragically canceled.
That's why I'm still a strong proponent of home media, because the boxes are always so cool, and a lot of those things, that's the only way to have them.
It's
if
true.
They got released that way at all.
You can't find them on streaming anymore.
Well, there's a line to walk from tragically canceled to, the show that we all love that we're all talking about right now, and the season that we're talking about. Going into season 4 of Community that we just finished going through episode by episode. And it's a real loaded topic. I kind of mentioned that before. There's a lot of feelings when it comes to season 4. Season 4 was the first season of Community that I watched live as it aired. I got really obsessed. I was like a sophomore in high school, if I'm being honest. And I got really obsessed with the first 3 seasons. I watched them really, really fast. And then season 4, I was so excited. And it was a roller coaster of emotions of being so excited to have my show every week. But then oh man, this is what I'm tuning in for. Were all of you around as it aired, or did you find it after the fact?
So I actually watched it. I remember watching the pilot. I don't remember if it was a rerun of the pilot, but I remember watching it in season 1, and mostly because I was a big Donald Glover fan. Mm-hmm. Also, ironically, around that same time, I did watch The Cape as it premiered, and I loved it. I feel like if I went back now, I would ironically love it, but back then I unironically loved it. And when we got to season 4, to be honest, I didn't notice a difference.
Wow.
At the time. I wasn't like super, like I wasn't analyzing the show, but I didn't really feel like there was any serious difference. But as I go back and rewatch it now, and frankly, it's probably like once I heard the term gaslight year, I was like, oh, okay, that changes how I look at the show forever now.
Gas leak year?
What did I say? Gaslight year?
That's a very different year.
I meant gas leak year.
That would also be around the years 2016 too.
I do find that really interesting because I always wonder if I didn't know anything was going on behind the scenes, would there be a dip? What?
We had friends who were on our pod who had only ever watched it when it was on Netflix in around 2020 when the pandemic hit, and we didn't tell them anything, and we were pretty like making sure to not spoil to see if they could tell.
Like looking at them the whole time while they're watching those episodes.
Well, and, I mean, we didn't live around them, so it was like more like they're texting me things, and I'm trying not to like give them too much information. And one of my friends who was watching it happens to be like a TV critic, so a lot of people were just tweeting her like, unfortunately, like, don't you know that this is what happened? And I was like, guys, just let someone watch it and make their own decisions. But they kind of had the same feeling. They could tell that something was a little bit off, but it was not like a pick up your pitchfork and go storm down NBC headquarters kind of rage that a lot of people were feeling.
Well, the Community fans aren't exactly a chill bunch, I feel like it's safe to say.
No.
We'll storm the building if they're canceling it. We'll storm the building if the show's not what we wanted it to be. We just want to storm a building.
I will say that they were very, very respectful. So I remember, not to jump in, but I remember being in, because I was in this fandom since season 2, from season 2 until the show ended. And I was really involved in Twitter around season 3 and like the fandom and fans fighting to save the show and all of that stuff. And I remember it was, I want to say Paley Fest. That was the first kind of big thing that Community Season 4 and the new showrunners were going to be at. And I remember the fandom being so like, y'all, do not give them a reason to be like, these fans are awful. Like, be very encouraging, be positive, be like thankful and express your gratitude. And to their credit, I feel like most people that I was seeing were doing that. Like in public, to the cast, to everything else. They weren't like, how dare this show be different. They were being fairly positive and receptive, and that was ahead of season 4 actually airing, I think. But like, or like maybe the first episode had aired or something like that. But I mean, there are factions of fandom that are just gonna be what they're gonna be. But I feel like I remember most people being moderately happy with it. Maybe just happy to have Community.
Yeah, and I get that. And I'm glad that people, like, I certainly don't want anybody, like, attacking the people that make a show, even if it is a bad show, right? Nobody deserves that.
Yeah.
But we had this conversation last week at, I don't know, you can understand what they were going through and what led to the end product that we have and, like, kind of look at it through those eyes. But also, like, my other point is that's not what decides if something's good or not. You know, like, all kinds of things have troubled production history and are incredible. There's some episodes this season that, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't notice that it was a little off if I didn't know anything was off. But when you're seeing, like, Chevy's body double in Heroic Origins and I mean, the season finale kind of in general. Yeah, what's up?
If you want to talk about troubled production history, that's the whole run of Community.
I mean, I was going to be like, I mean, that's all of it.
I think what I've noticed, at least in the fandom nowadays, is that, like, Community fans come in two types. There's the Community fans first, and there's the Harmon fans first, who Community is a Harmon product, so therefore they love Community. And I watched some Rick and Morty. I haven't seen any other Harmon stuff except for Monster House.
Nice.
So it's like I'm not like a diehard Harmon fan. I obviously love this show, so I respect him as a artist for it. But like that aspect of it isn't a big deal to me. So like I was like I was the lone dissenter in my friend group back in high school when this season was airing. I was like
maybe it'll be for the best.
Yeah, it was just like I was, in tune with. I wasn't totally involved in the fandom. I made my first Twitter account to help to tweet #SaveCommunity, but I wasn't like actively involved beyond that. So I wasn't like talking to other fans other than my friends. But I was reading up on like all the news and who was still involved in the show, and you
AV
had like
Club?
a lot of
Always the AV Club.
I wasn't a big. I wasn't again. I just
TV.com
didn't
was also
centralize. It was just wherever I could find it.
Yeah.
But I was like, not that. Community was the show that got me to like follow TV writers
Yes.
and like learn.
Same.
Basically, I learned
Absolutely,
about how
same.
TV was made through following Community.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like, and I feel that the people who are Community fans first recognize, first and foremost, that Dan Harmon isn't the show. He's a big, obviously a huge component of it because the season does feel very different. But like, you know, it feels different when he comes back too, and like,
Absolutely.
you know, there's missing pieces later on from when cast members leave and other writers leave, and when the writers' room gets a lot smaller, and like, there's all these other. So like now when I watch it, like it's definitely my least favorite season.
Yeah.
But not because of the lack of Dan Harmon, just because every season's got its ups and downs, and this just has
I agree with
the
you.
most downs, you know?
There are things that I think season 4 does a little better than the other seasons, namely being its heart. It wears its heart on its sleeve, and it's not like... I mean, the first couple seasons do sometimes, but season 4 really isn't afraid to have those huggy moments.
Sure.
That could be ham-fisted, but I think season 4 earns them more than it doesn't. And I really like that about it, and that's certainly something that leaves when Dan Harmon comes back.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought
Sorry,
that up.
I'm just so bitter about that.
I would like to have a little bit of that conversation. I didn't know how front-loaded I wanted to bring this up, but the whole thing is like, for not exactly us, but for a lot of Community fans, we celebrate the loss of Chevy because of how he was on set, but we also celebrate the return of Dan as like the savior of the show. And and it's like, it's problematic because at the same time, I do think the show is, if not the same when he comes back, is better off for him having come back. But I also understand that the reason he left was just as valid as the reason they got rid of the actor as well, because he was hard to work with. It's really, I don't know what my thought is on it, but it's a loaded topic for sure.
It's just one of those things, and like Ed, you were saying, like, there are people, and I find that a lot more of like, Dan Harmon is a genius, Dan Harmon is the show, this is him, like he is God, and we must accept that everything he does is genius. And I'm not saying Dan's not a genius. It's evident that he created something that is really, really, and again, I don't follow anything else from Dan Harmon, so like Community is my only frame of reference. Like, he does a lot of great things. There's a lot of things in the show that are super groundbreaking, that are iconic for many reasons. My biggest thing is, we didn't know at the time reasons that we do know now, and now looking back on, and I said this throughout the entire run of episodes we recorded in season 4. Now looking back on it, I can't in good faith be like, Dan shouldn't have been fired. I'm like, God, how wasn't he fired like 2 seasons before this?
Sure.
Like, just consistent behavior where it's not, a lot of people, I think, look at Dan Harmon getting fired and they're like, he was such a tortured creative genius. They just didn't understand his vision. And I'm like, no, that's not the reason he got fired, y'all. It's not because, NBC just couldn't see how, like, meta Community was. It was like, he would consistently go over budget. These cast members and writers were working so long that they used to post on set Fratter Days. Like, Fratter Day was a thing that Yvette
just
used
the
to
entire
post
2
because
days.
it was because it was Friday into Saturday they would be working. It was long and stressful hours. Harmon, as a person, as we now know, just functioning alcoholic. Not to mention, we're not going to touch a whole lot on it, but sexual harassment, like all of that stuff coming up. It's like, yes, he deserved to be fired. He should have been fired. And I can't look at the show and think like he should have been around. And there is this shift, like you were saying. I love a lot of season 4 because it is Community with heart without the cynical beat that comes after it with Dan.
Yeah.
Like, that's why there's a lot of season 5, and that's why I don't like season 6, is because by season 6, Dan is just like, I want to kill my show. I'm done with my show. And I'm mad that I've said 6 seasons in a movie, 3 seasons ago, and now these people want me to do this thing, and I'm ready to move on. And you can get that sense. Whereas in season 4, there was a lot of things that they struggled with. I know that the writers struggled with not having Dan there because he used to harmonize scripts. Like, that was a thing that he did, and he would be there to kind of pull them together. And I also know that there's a lot of great stuff that happened in season 4 because Dan wasn't there.
Certainly.
They had a lot of freedom to go home and to their families. You know, like that, I can't not celebrate that.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to have families and lives and less stressful working environments. And so that is something to be celebrated. And there is that kind of joy without the beat after. It's this like, oh, here's the punchline though. We can't really let them be happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That happens in season 4, and I love that. And so there is this huge mixed thing because I do see so many times of people, and that's where I just get upset because I'm like, don't knock on season 4. Like, season 4 had the people who were working behind the scenes in seasons 3 and 2.
Yeah.
And they were working in incredibly stressful environments then, and toxic work environments. And they were also incredibly stressed in season 4 because no matter what they gave us, it was never going to be enough for us. Like, so how can you sit there and be like, wow, this season is just terrible, suck, skip it. I'm like, no, this season may not have my favorite episodes of all of Community, but you know what? I look at it and I appreciate it because I know how hard they all worked. I know how much the crew and cast and writers and everyone put into this. And I do know that there is some celebration for me in Dan not being there because there is something that just doesn't ever come back after this season that the show kind of loses. And that may be a hot take, but I've stood firm on that since the season aired. I was like, I like this season. I'm okay with this season. There is good in this season. There's also real bad in this season. Yeah. But that's also true of every season of television you ever watch.
Yeah.
So.
I think there's really strong points on both sides. Because for one example that comes to mind for me is I love that they get to go home early, but I think in a Harmon-led season he wouldn't have been like, yeah, we can just drop the one-shot thing. We don't need it for the Christmas episode. He would have been like, no, we've started it. It's already baked into it. We have to see it through. And sure, it's great that someone else can be like, well, no, we can just all go home and make this look good how it is. But I do think it does miss a little something. I don't know.
This is also the first season that had a shortened episode count too. This is the first time we had a shortened season, and so we'll see that play out later on in more short seasons. But like, they not only had to be Dan Harmon-less, but they also only had 13 episodes. Sure. They're like, can you make the exact same show but with like half of an episode, like season count that you usually do? Cool.
I feel like part of, like, just what you mentioned, Jen, about them being Harmon-less, I feel like that is a really big reason why this season feels off for me. Not because it lacks Dan Harmon, but because like they are aware that they lack Dan Harmon, and I feel like they try to get to that point.
And so are we, the audience.
I mean, I'm okay with shows changing, but like, and I didn't think about this before, but Jen, like you said, there's that hint of cynicism behind the wholesomeness that Dan Harmon does provide. And like, I'm not a Harmonite or whatever, but like I love Rick and Morty. I just so happened, like, didn't really piece it together until maybe after season 1 of Rick and Morty, but I was like, oh my God, like, this is the guy that made Community? Okay, yeah. And I feel like part of why Rick and Morty hits with me, like, emotionally, like, it is a lot of crude humor and just, we're going to draw as many butts in one frame as possible because we think it's funny. And I love that level of just child humor, but at the same time, there are some episodes that, like, you do not expect them to hit, and then they hit, you know? And I feel like in my head, the most powerful episode of Community is the geothermal escapism, like the hot lava scene where Troy has to say goodbye to Abed. Like, there was, like, I feel like he delivered the very wholesome note, but still with the layer of ridiculousness of, like, sure, we're saying goodbye to Donald Glover, we're saying goodbye to Troy, our favorite character, one of our favorite characters, but like, there's still that twinge of just like, this is a little ridiculous. Like, they pulled the boat up onto the curtain is there.
Maybe we shouldn't have started a sea adventure from landlocked Colorado.
With this, I'm trying to find the name of the episode, but where Jeff meets his dad and is with Britta.
Love that episode.
Cooperative escapism and familiar relation.
Yes.
That was just straight up like, okay, we're only going character development.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's better or worse because of that. But I feel like you kind of know, especially after 3 seasons, you notice the pure wholesomeness. It just kind of feels off. Like, it's not bad, it's not better, it's just, it feels different off from what Community has delivered so far.
Yeah. What's really funny to me, and I always I challenge people all the time, because I'm like, this is such a throwaway line, but also I feel like everyone should be aware of it in season 5 premiere, where they talk about the gas leak year. And Jeff explicitly says, oh, come on, you can't blame it all on the gas leak year. I'm like, for all of the people who are talking about how bad season 4 is, that's Dan being like very meta, like, the problems didn't start in season 4 though, did they? Like, I mean, like, how much more clear can you be? That's why I'm always like, but he knows that the problems, because I think that my biggest issue is people thinking like season 4 is the problem and there were no problems before this. Like,
I had problems with season 3. Season 3 in its worst moments was a mess.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is
all over that.
I think it's an easier target for people, but I think it would behoove everyone to rewatch in light of, like, yeah, Dan was here and there were still issues.
Yeah.
So what's your excuse now?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's
now,
The
so
problem with season 4 through 6 in general is that lack of continuity. It's not like Dan's a part of that. Him leaving and coming back, and the cast leaving, and some people coming, like, all that. That's all individual parts of it. Season 4 seems like it's got the target on its back because of the Dan issue, but you brought up like the shortened season run. That's a huge thing. Like the fact that it was canceled midway through the season before. So I doubt they were planning ahead much of season 4 when they were doing season 3. Like they might have been with previous seasons. You know, like it's a lot going on that has nothing to do with Dan. That
they're really
or
just
is
were,
to do with Dan, but like because he caused it, because he's maybe
well,
wasn't
exactly
the best boss all the time. You know,
I'm like so
if nothing else had changed except Dan had been fired in season 4, if it had been 22 episodes, every other writer stayed on, every producer, like it might have been the best season yet. You never know. It's like but they were dealing with way more than just that. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Before we segue into talking about the worst episodes of the season, I think a couple of the good things about the season, I mean, it's the last season where we really have the full cast. I mean, give or take whether we really have Pierce or not sometimes. There are good moments with Pierce. There are good moments with Troy, who we're soon to leave. Or soon to lose, and it's nice to have everyone together. It's even got some of those season 1 vibes in some of its episodes, a little bit of stories that are conceptually small that just allow the characters to kind of go off one another in a school setting, and that's something that I think season 5 kind of loses that I like about season 4.
Agreed. Yeah.
Let's talk about the worst episodes. No, go ahead. Make your point.
That I agree. Everything you said, I agree with. I like that this is like, in some ways, it feels like Community died at the end of every season, starting with season.
It's true,
3.
it
did. Sure.
Both in being canceled and just like creatively, like full stop, and then they have to kind of repilot every season. And this being the first of those, again, it's like it still kind of loses. It doesn't feel like as much a part of the first 3 seasons as those 3 seasons all definitely feel like one thing. But in having every other piece be intact on screen, at least with the cast, like I mean, I think even just like the tonal shift we were talking about before, once Dan comes back, like this is the last happy season of Community. This is the last colorful season of Community. This is the last bright season. The last season, like where they could afford a full set worth of lights, apparently, because season 5 is darker than doom.
Then season 6, they're in the basement in Yahoo's defunct studio. It's the last season where people get to be happy.
Yeah.
That's honestly what I would like to say is like, if you watch from season, and that's the big, I mean, I have a lot of issues with things that happen. If you listen to our podcast, you know I have a lot of issues. I have qualms, lots of qualms. But I mean, it's the last season where people get a chance to be genuinely happy with no kind of caveat at the end, with no cynical punch, with no big thing that happens to take their happiness and joy away, because Dan undoes all that happiness in the first episode he comes back in. So I would like to venture to say that this is the last season until maybe the series finale that people are actually, these characters are actually happy. Like, that's I would say so.
That just made me think, I think someone could be less, not knowing anything behind the scenes, be less turned off by 3 into 4 as they are by 4 into 5 because it's so much darker.
Yep.
All of a sudden, everybody's depressed as hell. I get why Dan had a huge chip on his shoulder coming back, probably not just because of being fired, but I think it was a wake-up call for him in a lot of ways. And then to be like given the keys back with a lot of, I mean, I get why he's probably pissed and why he's probably upset at himself. But that makes a bigger difference in the show's tone than I think 3 into 4 does.
It's also interesting because seasons 5 and 6, and this might be getting into super weeds, like seasons 5 and 6, it almost shifts to where Dan comes back and now Jeff is his avatar rather than Abed, because Jeff becomes a functional alcoholic. We don't address it. We do, but then he becomes violent. And it's like a whole thing that I have so many issues with. Yeah. But like you're saying, like, Dan comes back and everything shifts, and you can tell that he's bitter and cynical. And whether or not you can understand his reasonings, it's like, if you can tell that, I don't know that that's a good thing.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I don't feel like that's great to be able to feel now that I'm celebrating season 5 coming back, and all of a sudden all of my characters are destroyed within the first episode because you've crushed all of their hopes and dreams and spirits and character development. So
when I talk to like more casual Community fans, it's always when Troy leaves that I hear as like the shift of like, like
I would
like
agree.
when Michael left The Office or whatever.
I'd
like
agree.
you always like, when did the show become bad? Like a lot of people say it's when Troy leaves, and that's because maybe they do or don't know about the behind the scenes stuff, but that's the most clear on-screen indicator that something major has shifted. Because again, like even Pierce, they were sort of
by
like,
the time he's gone, he'd been gone for 15
and
episodes.
Yeah,
season
Pierce is like,
3,
whatever, we
he barely
expect
had
him to
an
go.
important role. I don't know, my hot take is that they probably should have just not brought him back after season 2. Like, I think I think his story was over there, and they struggled. I mean, one of my biggest issues with this season is that they're really struggling to find like Pierce is. Not only is he barely in it, literally, but like even the episodes he's in, it's like, we're doing this again. Like his dialogue just is like,
it's like
things
that
were done better.
Oh my god, the episode
stuff,
where is it in this season where he puts like the characters on his hands and he's got like a racially insensitive caricatures on his hands.
Yeah.
Oh,
when
yeah.
that episode didn't get
I do
out,
think it
that
is this
That was
one.
one of the first ones where I was like, if we're talking about pulling episodes here,
that in season 3, Jane Dynasty, I'm like, excuse you? Like, but also, I feel like Pierce's stories are in season 4 are retreads of things they did better in season 1. Like, there's a lot of conversations and things that, like, I'll talk about it in a little bit. There's one specific episode where I was like, this Jeff storyline with you was done better in season 1. It's the same story.
Well, because they have him for like a day a week. Chevy's already pissed when the scripts are like sappy. I mean, you can't get the man to do anything. So what can you do but like tell a story with him in like 6 lines, give or take? I mean, that is something that I truly don't hold against the show, because he just clearly is not here to play. And it is sad, even though Dan Harmon leaving is for the best, it's sad that he had to leave so they could keep Pierce, and this is what we get out of Pierce after that. That sucks. I think season 4 would have been better without the whole, is Pierce going to be in this episode? No? Okay.
Yeah. Ed, back to what you were saying about like casual fans thinking like the show dropped off after Troy left. Definitely the first time I watched through the show, that was my feeling as well. Is like, I don't think I thought season 4 was the best of the show for sure, but there were a couple episodes that I really enjoyed, so it was, just fine for me. But after Troy left is when I, stopped being as invested in the show. And I think that definitely, like, looking at the show from a more detailed and kind of in a more like critical lens, now I think, I see a lot of issues with season 4, but at the time I wasn't really worried about it, and I was just happy to be watching the show.
Well, I think that's a good segue. Let's start with our bottom episodes of the season. I think we're each going to give our bottom 4, whether it's in a particular order or not. And I just say we go one at a time. So does anybody feel led to get us started?
I can go.
Okay, popcorn.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So I think I said before we started recording, I ended up rewatching this whole season the last day. So
That's
I just
insane.
ranked everything, and I tiered them in genuinely good Community, solid attempt at Community, which is most of the episodes, and then my bottom 2, which is Community and Name Alone. So I guess, do you want me to go like bottom to fourth from
Dealer's
bottom?
choice,
fourth,
but I'll
okay.
probably go like least worst to worst worst.
Okay. So yeah, my 10 out of 13 then. My bottom 4, which I would put in the solid attempt at community category. These first 2 are Conventions of Space and Time and Economics of Marine Biology.
Okay.
I actually enjoyed both these episodes quite a bit. Jen, I think Marine Biology was the one you were referring to with the Pierce plotline. I think that is such a dud, especially because Jeff learns just like the worst lesson from it. Like you can do like we're too mean to Pierce sometimes, and they've done it before and they've done it well, but like having it be like, no, he's all right. Now I'm gonna go back and make homophobic jokes with him.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the lesson I'm gonna take away from this, is that it's fun to be ignorant around older guys.
Yeah.
Like the whole point of like many episodes of Community is that if Jeff grows up and becomes Pierce, that's gonna be a bad thing. And this episode is just him embracing that future. Like it's awful. But I find the whale stuff funny, and I like the like Magnitude having to come up with a new. I like the way they incorporate him. And Conventions of Space and Time, I think, is like, again, like I'm not a huge fan of the B plot with Jeff and Annie. That felt very much like they were trying to do what they thought Community and like that dynamic was, but they didn't really feel true to the characters. And there's other, there's good jokes. It just felt like something that would have been better in like a season 2 or season 3 episode. But then my bottom 2 are History 101, which I think is like has jokes I like, but it's so like every character is just representing whatever their surface level character trait is, and like that kind of is brought even more to the surface when the whole joke of Abed going into these different like versions is like everyone's getting more and more caricatured and more Flanderized, but that's like on the surface real level that's still happening, so it doesn't really work. And then my bottom episode is the finale. So I think the bookends of this season are the weakest parts, which is a shame because that's what you're gonna be thinking about the most. But that finale, they really thought that they really were trying to tell me with specifically in dialogue tell me that the episode was awesome and they had really nailed it.
That's the last thing you should ever do, even if your episode is awesome, because it just begs
they would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for the meddling kids.
And like I think like story wise, I thought like the actual end of the episode was like heartwarming and nice, and I didn't mind like that, but like I just it just was kind of a mess getting there. I don't know. It's a dud. Yeah,
that's good. Bo, do you have a question?
I just wanted to see, that's the thing. In my head, I'm like, oh, this is like a good segue because like that's also my least favorite episode. But internally, it didn't come out obviously as smoothly because I raised my hand on an audio.
Yes.
So, just to take the spotlight for a bit, So if the finale is my least favorite episode of the season, my second to least favorite episode of the season is the Felt Surrogacy one.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, just the puppet episode. And it is, I just want to get it out of the way because I know that people like this episode, or some people like this episode.
It's so polarizing.
It is purely because I'm a puppets are just, it's a medium that I can't it takes me out of it. Like we watched Pan's Labyrinth like maybe 2 months ago. Like I'd seen it for the first time. I was like, I understand why this is amazing, but every time I see Doug Jones do like this with his fingers, I get taken out of it. And I can appreciate the artistry, I can appreciate the acting.
True.
But it takes me out of it. George Costanza's in the forest. Why? Sarah Bareilles. Why?
And with an absolutely beautiful head of hair too.
Right? Why?
Like
I don't think that was a costuming choice. I think that was just what he was.
That was just pure Jason Alexander.
I really
who I forget is in that episode every single time.
I've been watching a lot of Seinfeld lately, and it's nice to see him play a kind of, I mean, not cool because he feeds them forest berries, but it's nice to see him play a not George kind of character. A less George-like person.
Like I feel like part of why this season in general feels off to me is because they try so hard and they get so close,
and in the end, my head, it doesn't
even matter.
I feel like it should. Wow. A community puppet episode should work. Like I'm not a fan of claymation, but I still like. And honestly, as I like I have the bias against that episode, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't watch it every Christmas. Like it's a good episode of TV.
Yeah.
But with this, it just feels like they didn't have enough faith in the, okay, well, we're going to do a special episode with puppets. And they're like, okay, well, what else? Like, and then what? And then what? And then
Like
what?
there
and
is
then
no
what?
and else.
Yeah. And then after a while, what should be like a series of really messed up reveals, which why is that necessary for our characters in this show? We kind of drop it after that. So I'm like, I don't really, it felt unnecessarily extra with no real payoff in the end. Next I have Basic Human Anatomy.
Whoa.
I just don't. I hate the gimmick. I hate the gimmick.
I was excited to see if all of our lists were going to kind of line up, and I can already see
I
that
can
they
tell
are
you they
not.
will
Wow.
No,
Yeah,
they're
I'm
not.
sorry.
No, but go ahead.
Damn.
State your business.
Again,
Deleting
this is
your
just me
number
being.
off my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just
And the
I don't
crumbling
fully-
continues.
like I didn't care about the Troy and Britta relationship, and then after a while I accepted it, and then you want to end it in a way that feels too like as soon as Troy does the like oh no I'm Abed now, like as Britta, as an adult,
Yeah.
you break up and you don't look back. Like in my head,
Britta's like,
as soon as
isn't
that
this
happens-
cute and quirky?
Yeah, like
I have
I'm
no
gonna go
say
on
in
my
this.
anniversary date with my boyfriend's best
Yeah.
friend. Sure. No, like I don't know. It makes me respect all characters involved less
Interesting.
by far. And then my
I'm hurt.
like I'll not turn it off, but economics of marine biology, like I like it purely because of the scene where Magnitude gets pop taken from him. I think that's so funny. Like unironically, I think that's hilarious.
You're
But
never to
everything
say
else-
pop again.
Yeah,
Really funny.
like everything else in that episode is just in my head. It is filling space until that moment. Like the Archie character was fine. The fact that he never showed up again means nothing.
Yeah.
Like, and I forget, because in my head the image of Pierce and Jeff sitting in the barbershop, in my head I'm like, oh, that's a wholesome moment, and then I remember
then you
the
watch
actual,
it.
like,
It's not.
you
yeah.
watch it and you're like, oh, so like Jeff is just taking 5 steps back as a person with this episode, like for nothing. Like he should, in this episode he should have been the lazy Jeff. That would have been
Yeah.
progression for his character, and it wasn't.
Jeff's not some fucking like front of the line ally or anything, but the homophobia really bothers me because he's like, there are characters that are more blatant. Like Britta has been more blatantly homophobic in the past, and it's like, just be consistent with your character's bigotries. That's all I'm saying. Like
Jeff doesn't ask
Like, come
any
on.
questions because he's not homophobic.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I can pick up there because to go from 4 to 1, 4 is economics of marine biology. I'm pretty sure this is the episode with the physical education storyline, which is the only thing I appreciate from this episode, because it's the only bit of Shirley that we get in this, like in a story where she's not being a wife or mom or Christian, and that's not the focus.
Sure.
Season 4 does more with Shirley than any of
I
the other
agree.
seasons combined. And this is one of those
Maybe not
moments
season
where,
1.
well, for growth, I would say, or something beyond her. Because really, season 1 is still, oh, Shirley's so
Sure,
judgy. She's
I
a
guess.
Christian. She's homophobic. She's like, that's basically her persona. And she doesn't really change a whole lot.
Okay, sure.
But we learn so much more about Shirley as the seasons progress, but we only learn them in little bits. But in season 4, we learn that she's on the valedictorian track. We learn that she's really good at physical education. We get a chance to see her outside of the study group. We see her family.
More
Like
of her family,
they
yeah.
actually cared about Shirley as a character in season 4, and then Dan came back, and I'm just gonna leave it there. And so that's the only bit of the story that I actually like. The rest of it, I'm just kind of like, it was there. It's a thing that happened.
Isn't the PEE also the only Troy and Shirley plot?
Yeah.
in the entire
Ever?
series?
Yeah,
Is that
pretty
true?
much.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's the only substantial Shirley and Troy story. I mean, they're together in the sailing class, but it's not really just them.
Yeah.
It's just the two of them in that one. And that's
Just
nice.
the two of
It's
them.
a cool dynamic.
How nice. jokes. If only Community had done that more.
What, like a C plot in a season 4 episode?
Yeah.
Wow, it only took Dan Harmon leaving for them to be like, wow, there are other character pairings, and Shirley is a fully realized person.
I didn't want to make the joke, but and it's Always Sunny. The whole, like, there's a bit where he's like, well, we need to have more black guys in the bar. So that we can have diversity, but we don't want too many black guys in the bar because then
it's a black bar. Yeah.
So I think Community didn't do that because they're just like, if someone's just flipping through the channels and they see 2 black people on screen for more than 5 minutes, then they'll think
it's a black show.
Click
Change
off.
it. Flip it.
Click off.
Yeah.
Number 3, we rewrote this episode on our pod is Heroic Origins.
Okay, cool. I'd be interested. I haven't listened to that. That's interesting.
The whole story really just falls apart pretty easily. Again, it goes back to the whole, like, this is something that I feel like they could have done better. And of course, as Matt from Communities points out, there's a lot of the script was like thrown together essentially. So it makes sense as to why this was not. There's just a lot of plot holes in this one that you're like, you did not tell me this. Like, also,
sure,
there's
these
something
kids
that
would remember who Abed is.
Directly contradicts this later on. So you can tell that it was something that we were kind of being like, oh, cool. Well, if it had, because the conflict is also contrived. Like, Shirley being mad at Jeff because he did something before she, like, it just doesn't feel like a real conflict. And then the resolution is just kind of like, you can't just slap Greendale's Where I Belong kind of feel on a scene and call it good. This one y'all haven't mentioned yet, but advanced documentary filmmaking is number 2 because I cannot. Changnesia is something that we repeatedly forgot, and it wasn't even a joke when we were talking about season 4. We were like, hey, so yeah, there was also that storyline.
That's the first time it's been mentioned all night. I was thinking about that earlier. I was like, wow, nobody's mentioned Changnesia yet, this whole convo.
I can't watch this episode because also I just hate Changnesia, and the documentary episodes were so good before this that I was like, this
2 of the best of the entire run.
This Changnesia and then Jeff being aggressively, like, continually terrible. It's just one of those cringe episodes that, like, happen early Office that I felt like I was like, oh gosh, I can't watch this. I don't want to watch this. And then number 1 is Intro to Felt Surrogacy. I have talked about this. I talked about this on pod.
I wasn't expecting that. I did not know this.
I will not rehash all of this. I mean, there's a lot of issues I have with it. I feel like Puppets could have worked better if there was some sort of better emotional core behind it. It's a rehash of the same kind of story. Oh no, the group has secrets. Oh no, we gotta let them out. Oh no, we gotta fight.
Yeah.
The one thing that really sets this over the edge for me that I was so mad about at the time and continue to be mad about is that there's a joke about Annie being sexually harassed by a professor. And that is so not even, like, remotely okay. And they make it a joke in the show. Like, oh, do you guys think that I'm a slut now? I'm like, you were sexually harassed by a professor that repeatedly in this season they said was a sexual harasser. And given also now everything that we know about Community, that is the worst. It leaves the worst possible taste in my mouth for this show. And that is not, even in, like, season 6 I have my issues, but, like, that particularly still makes me so uncomfortable and mad. And so I cannot like that episode. I can't respect that episode for the fact that they had that be Annie's secret and that be, like, a runner throughout the season, as Cornwallis is someone who has been fired because he harasses women. And let's play it for jokes.
For there to be no, like, obviously they shouldn't have done it at all, but it's not like they're doing it to set up Cornwallis getting fired for, like, it's a joke that's not funny.
It's a joke that plays out in a song on this dumb, using my dumb fucking episode. Like, I can't do it. I just, I rewatched it and I was like, you know what? It still made my blood boil. And so for that, and because Annie is also my favorite character, to have her be the brunt of that and to have no consequences. Like you said, Bo, like, this episode has no consequences for anything the rest of the season or series.
It's so throwaway that when we get to the secret, like, I have to actively remember why they were puppets in the first place. I forgot that there were secrets until I rewatched it. Like, and I've seen the show 1,000 times. I forgot that there were secrets in the first place.
Yeah.
When they get to the campfire.
For there to be this whole like air around them where they can't talk to each other and really none of them have anything to them. It would have made more sense if they like all got drugged and like had sex with each other or something, and now it's really awkward and they can't talk to each other. Or,
yeah. Also, Abed's lack of secret, again regressing. Abed as a character being like, oh, I just noticed your faces. I'm like, we're in season 4, y'all. Like, stop pretending that Abed is either a robot, a computer, whatever you pretend he is, and he's not a human with emotions at this point. It's just like
consistent with that.
I know.
Consistent with that in the season, because this is the same season with Her Story of Dance where he's like aloof and like the Abed that we know is actually Abed and not just the Flanderization.
I didn't even really notice it until we did our episode about it, and my friend pointed it out, and he's like, I don't buy it. Like, I hate that Abed doesn't have a secret because he studies their faces, and he notices that they're upset. Like, what are we in season 1? And anyway, I have lots of qualms with that.
Well, that was awesome. I wasn't expecting that, and I loved it. Go ahead, Steve.
Off of that, my number 4 is Intro to Felt Surrogacy.
Wow, that bad.
Least favorite. Yeah, I love Sarah Bareilles, and I was really excited to watch this one again. And then I was like, wow, this sucked. I was not a big fan of this. I mean, they could have done such a better, like, I don't know, you have puppets. You like make these great puppets. You have like great puppeteers. They're doing awesome puppetry with them. And you have like a shit story, and it sucks because like it was just such a wasted opportunity, and it's just a frustrating episode to think about. I mean, there's a lot of jokes that aren't funny. I don't know. It's just one that could have been great, but was very far from it for me. So that's my number 4. My number 3 was History 101. A lot of bad in that one. The things that I like almost like, they ruin, so they're not worth watching. I mean, enough's been said about that one. My number 2 is Economics of Marine Biology. I did not like that episode at all. Archie was fine. He did nothing wrong, but he is inconsequential because he never comes back. The Jeff in the old-timey misogynistic, homophobic, racist-ass barbershop is one of my least favorite images of the entire series. Leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
You were mad about that one. I remember.
I was, and we had a long discussion. I don't know if that's really what's happening. I'm like, yes, Zach. What do you think it is?
They are sure all like, wow, those were the days, huh?
Yeah. Back when you could smack whoever you want on the street. It's fine. I'm a white man in America. And then that's like that's not what the show is about. That's not who we want Jeff to be. If Jeff is supposed to be, especially in the from season 5 on, Jeff is especially the main person who we're supposed to view as this guy we like, who's grown. But that was him being a worse version of season 1 Jeff. Somehow they pulled that off. So really not big into that one. And then my least favorite episode of the season was the finale. That's just a hot mess express. It's like they're like, you know what, this is the last one we got. Let's just burn it to the goddamn ground.
Hey, but at least they
robot arm Jeff. The whole like, wait, I'm the king of this world.
It just logistically doesn't make any sense. We talked about this. Like, how is the darkest timeline in Jeff's head now when it's only been established to be an
why is he visualizing Abed talking with Abed?
Yeah, if it's all in Jeff's head, why does it have an Abed subplot?
How does he know all of these things? How does he know everything about the darkest timeline? Because he clearly can't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I
feel like they knew what Community was, but like didn't necessarily.
And that one,
I feel like they knew what Community was, but they didn't know what it meant to us because like obviously we know, like if you're just watching the show like the first time through, you're not really like loving it. You're just like, I'm gonna finish it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, I still think that on surface level, the idea of, hey, this could be the last episode of Community ever. We're going to go all out. We're going to bring back paintball. We're going to bring back the darkest timeline. We're going to have the dean looking like he's going to marry Jeff. Like we're going to give everything that you would want, but it's just so like it should have worked on paper. It should have worked, but we know, oh, well, this is only an Abed thing, so why would Jeff? If Jeff has been completely, like, they completely underestimated how annoying we are as a fan base.
The biggest thing that I pointed out to when we talked about this was that, like, Paintball and The Darkest Timeline inherently have, like, no real emotional core. Like, they're just kind of fun things that happen in Community. So it's like, to weight it in something that's super heavy and emotional didn't work because these are just kind of throwaway scenes, throwaway fun things that Community makes reference to. And logistically, it didn't quite work. I love the idea of, again, in concept, Jeff struggling with leaving, everyone else being okay. I think that the speech he gives is beautiful and I love it. But, like, it's the execution of how he gets there. I feel like that if we took away Paintball and that, it could have been so much better.
Well, I hear what you guys are all saying, but I think you guys missed that they made Paintball cool again, so all your points are kind of...
Do we count this as paintball? Do we count it as paintball?
But they made it cool, guys. It's okay.
They found a way to make paintball
it's fine.
Again.
It was
There's
great.
No real
logistical
explanation of how that works anyway. Do they just reappear? Because apparently Pierce has done this multiple times to themselves. Like, they're not dead. They come back somehow. Anyway.
My bottom four, I'll do real quick. My least worst, I put History 101. I remember watching it for the first time as it premiered. And the second they pulled down the Hunger Deans banner, I was like, oh, we might be in trouble. It just feels like... One of my biggest issues with season 4 is trying to reference something just for the sake of referencing something, or because Community is the show that does that, rather than having it be. I don't know. It feels like the emotional through line of Abed seeing things this way is an afterthought. But the Hunger Deans is like put it in the commercial so people think it's the Hunger Games. Third, I've got no, that's wrong list. Third, I've got advanced documentary filmmaking. I really hate that in that episode, the Changdeja stuff is bad, but it's kind of funny when it's just Kevin acting ridiculously. But that episode asks us to believe that most people believe it's real. And that's the second that I lose it. And the fact that everyone is so believing him and that he's doing such a good job covering it up. And then the last moments of the episode, he like loudly takes a phone call in the hallway and Evil laughs about how, oh, all you idiots. I don't know. It's stupid. And especially when in name it ties itself to two of the best episodes of the whole show. It's pretty rough. My second worst, I'm surprised nobody mentioned this one. Alternative History of the German Invasion.
That was almost my number 4.
A dreadful episode. Like, economics was almost my fourth worst, but I don't know. That one just ceases to... I just feel nothing about that episode. The German one... I don't know. They didn't even bring back Nick Kroll, who was the only funny one in the first episode.
They couldn't afford him.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure they couldn't afford him.
I don't know. That episode...
I doubt that was by choice. I doubt that was a conscious creative choice to have his like his cousin or whatever.
Yeah. It makes me feel nothing. I can't even remember without Googling what else happens in that episode, really. All.
That pretty much is the A.
I really like,
I think that's pretty much one of the rare ones where we really only have an A.
Yeah,
sort of.
I think there's a Chang and Dean thing in there.
There is.
But it's so.
I forget about
of all the episodes to make the A plot the star of it. There is no A plot in it, really. I hate that one. And then the worst,
I love the moment when they're all their chairs are breaking, though. Like
I do love that the study group gets their comeuppance. I love that they get the flashbacks of like when they've hogged the study room before.
Yeah,
it does have that moment. They have to learn that like
someone lost a pen.
Kind of suck, you know.
Yeah,
like the whole school hates these people. Like obviously, wouldn't you hate them too?
It felt to me this episode felt like a follow up to another episode I know people don't love, but I'm a fan of, the Todd episode in season 3.
I love
oh my gosh, I love that episode.
Because they're just that's the episode where the study group are the bad guys. They are the out and out. They are just bad people.
Yeah,
and they're not the It's Always Sunny cast or whatever, but they're not great. And I like that this episode calls them out on it. So that's my defense of that. Even though I had it in like the middle of the pack, I don't think it's that good or bad, but. Yeah. And
then worst of the worst, other than Jen, I think, did we all say Advanced Introduction to Finality? Bo, did you say that one too? Was that everyone else's least favorite?
No, I piggybacked off of Ed with that one.
Yeah, I don't like this one. One of the biggest things that I don't like about season 4 is whenever they do something like remember, we're Community. We're the show that does this, and you love it. Remember, Garrett, Crisis Alert, ha ha ha, you guys, remember? And I feel like that episode does it the worst. It almost feels like if you put all the scripts of Community into an AI and had it write a
and it had to write an episode.
It's like, you got timeline, you got paintball. I don't know. I really hate it. And especially that it, in some ways, has these series finale vibes, I think makes it even worse. The fact that it's maybe the series finale and there's nothing of closure or forward momentum for anyone but Jeff at all.
I mean, yeah, like, but also in season 3, was there really either? Like, season 3 would have kind of ended with some dangling threads of people. Like, we really just got a story.
I don't love that episode either.
There was no Annie. Annie would have had well, and I'm just saying, like, Community doesn't do a good job of doing that until it gets to its series finale.
Yeah.
It really doesn't close up any stories because I think that they always wanted that open door. I just like the speech, and as much as we all hate Pierce, I do love that this is like the last season where we actually get the whole group. It's the last season finale where we have that. So
that's why I like the ending. I just think it's
I do like the ending. I think
nice
it's everything to get. I like the concept.
I don't know. You said just earlier about whatever episode you put on Greendale is where I belong over it. At the end of that episode, after this whole the darkest timeline's real and it's not real, and what this all f***ing sucks. And then at the end of the episode, they're like, but now it's all happy. So,
but it's less about. I mean, like, I get that, but it's less about the heart of Jeff leaving and struggling and the whole group being fine with it, because they're totally okay with him going. They're like, we're sending you off on a party, and Jeff's the one having an existential crisis. I do love that Jeff doesn't give this big speech. He just tells them that he loves them. It's very early 21st romantic expressionism, like speech text that he sends, and I like it for that reason. But like, it's middle of the pack for me. It's just kind of like, it's with History 101 of like, they're there. They exist. They're a thing. It doesn't make me mad the way that
one makes my blood
makes
boil.
me mad.
What made me so mad when we were talking about it was I was like, if this was the last episode of Community, I think that like the entire reputation of the show would be not as, I don't know. I think it would not be viewed as, it would be, Jen, one of your like tragic cancellation shows. You know, that's what it would be in that same vein of, is something that like could have been good, but then like sour at the end, you know, whereas it got 6 whole seasons. So I think the two
even if you like 5 and 6 not as much as the first couple, I do feel like rounding out the series with those last couple seasons and taking it to an end in a different way, I do think does fill out the show nicely. I think I do like it better as a whole with the 6 seasons than I would have with the 4 seasons. I don't think I would watch season 4 very much if it was the last season.
Sure.
I agree with that, but let's not like, and I think the series finale is great, and I enjoy season 6 more than season 4, but let's not act like Community going out with a whimper on Yahoo screen is a better, like, I don't know if it ending at season 4 with this finale would have destroyed the reputation of those
I don't
first
know
3
if I'd take it
seasons
that
any
far.
more than ending
I
on
think
Yahoo
it would have just
screen
been
did.
I think it would have just been like we wish, like, it kind of is it ties things up, and it's like the dream of what could have been. It's not like they ended it on a cliffhanger and now I'm so mad because Dan Harmon doesn't get a chance to you know tell his 6 seasons or whatever.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
they knew they weren't going to do that. They were cognizant and like, we're going to wrap things up. Jeff graduates. It's season 4. That has always kind of been the plan we were headed in. So that's what happens. And it's like, cool. So if that's the end, then Jeff graduated. And like I said before, I will defend this. They all end the season happy. They're fine. Yeah. They're great. That's where I could leave them, because in season 5 and 6, I struggle with coming back and leaving them repeatedly being worse off than they were in season 4. I'm just saying.
Start the list of favorite episodes of the season? Right ahead. Because I noticed that 2 of my favorites, Zach, are in your least favorite list.
Wow.
And I want to give a lukewarm defense for both of them. So, the German invasion episode. It's
Jesus, okay.
It's like my 3rd favorite of the, purely for the just, it. This episode's a cartoon now. Like, really going all into like, this is dumb. We're gonna have dumb German accents. I feel like I'm being disrespectful because like I don't know the Nick Kroll replacement's name.
Sure.
Only that he's Nick Kroll's replacement.
It's the guy that tried to bang Pam in The Office, isn't it?
Yes, the camera operator guy.
Chris,
That's his
is it
actor.
Chris?
Yeah, and
Chris
he's-
something.
He's in Silicon Valley. He's okay. So I forget that he's the same person, and then I remember, and then I have the same revelation. But so the whole ruse from Hogan's villains, like that gets a kick out of me every time. Just like the effort that they all go into, like everyone's in dress and the 100 Luftballons, and that makes me laugh every time.
100 Luftballons.
Them walking, like the group walking away, and then the main, not Nick Kroll, is just like, oh, English is my second language, for no reason, off screen. Like, I love that. I loved the him about to stab the cake, and then Troy popping out with a gas mask, and it's just like, I guess plans have changed. And I love the idea that, like, yeah, the entire school is just like, no, you guys suck. Like, you...
Yeah.
Just Todd's delivery of, they lost a pen.
A pen.
Like, I unironically love this episode. Like, is it for the depth and does it exemplify the qualities that I think the show can, like, the heights that the show can reach? No, absolutely not. Is it a fun episode of TV that I enjoy watching? Yeah, for sure. And then, what was the other one? Was it, I'm sorry, I have a list, and I'm trying to cross-reference as fast as I can. Advanced documentary filmmaking.
What? No way.
For basically
That's
the same
in my
reasons.
top 4 too. Okay.
For basically the same reasons.
Good, I'm glad.
I used to hate Changnesia until, frankly, this, like, rewatching for this, I was like, Changnesia's kind of funny. I think it's
Did
kind
you
of
get
funny.
Changnesia
I love it.
while watching
I love
this?
it so
No,
much.
because
I've been biting my tongue this whole thing so far. I'm waiting.
I've been joking
I
since
do
season
think
six.
it's
Chang
better
Ninja.
than
One of the
Chang
worst things
taking
I
over
feel.
the school.
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
it's better than Dictator Chang.
I
Like,
agree.
what
He's
else
funny.
are they? How else are
Like-
they going to let this guy be one of the main characters?
But-
I was going to
that's
say,
in
I feel
is
like-
it better, or is it just a consequence of them doing something so outlandish that then now they have to undo it with something equally outlandish,
it's-
but
yeah.
in the opposite direction?
it's definitely Michael Scott pulling out a gun in improv. It's definitely like,
Yeah.
you can't, there's no way to really go bigger than this. So in my head, it is, okay, so how do you go bigger than Napoleon? Batshit insanity. Like, no.
Mechanical Spider.
And then Mechanical Spider at the end. You not only make Chang even crazier, but you just extend his craziness to everyone. Also, I feel weird using the word crazy. Like, I feel like Chang as the avatar for mental illness on the show, not necessarily
Well,
a
don't
great
put it
move.
like that.
I'm just saying. That's,
Now I have to feel bad about it.
I'm
Say
saying, like,
absurdity.
Absurdity.
The absurdity.
Yeah.
Just the Changiness of it all. Like,
He might have monkey fever.
There you
yeah,
go.
okay, so the monkey fever example, whatever. But, like, I think the fact that it's amnesia, which is, like, crazy on its own, but he names it Changnesia, which is, again, another level of crazy, and then convinces everyone at the school, except for Jeff for a while, and Abed, that it's real. And to me, that's the perfect level of, like, okay, you know what? I've seen ridiculous things before. That's TV. You know, TV is reality at a level of absurdity, and that's TV. And then, okay, let's make it really specific. Okay, that to me is like more Community, and then make the entire school, like the entire environment of the show, cop into this insane. Like, I am all in. This is, and maybe I inhaled monkey gas. I don't know. Upon this last rewatch, I really appreciated it a lot more than I used to. Other than that, I have cooperative escapism and familiar relations, the Shawshank episode, which I feel like it's just kind of solid beginning to end. I think conceptually, like, them all coming together to help Shirley is pretty good, so I don't really feel like I need to dive deep into that. And then this surprised me upon this rewatch. My favorite episode of the season was Paranormal Parentage.
Whoa! Not expecting that.
I was not expecting that either
Really?
when I rewatched it.
Okay.
For one thing, the Pierce calling everyone in, and then, like, kind of the scene of them of Abed and Pierce kind of talking, and Abed being like, "Oh yeah, it's really cool how you, like, did all these things, and you're, like, showing how you scared everyone." Because I remember at the time, like, him trying to pop out of the wall with the foam, or not foam, but the whatever,
Yeah.
like him popping out of the wall, Pierce popping out of the wall to scare Jeff. I remember at the time I was like, oh, like, this is more scary than I was expecting from this show. This is cool. And then the shot of the Gilbert watching Pierce as he slept, I was like, oh, that's actually, like, disturbing in a way that I was really not expecting from this show. I think the jokes are solid enough. I think the couple's costumes were cute. The adult gymnasium was very funny.
Yeah.
And just
dogs.
Yeah, anything that Troy said in relation to his relationship with Britta, of just the thing. No, was that this episode?
Things, yes.
Yeah, things.
We don't do all
But
the things.
That's
we
an
do
episode
some of the
that
things.
I had issues with that because there's the whole like Shirley saying to Troy, "Oh, Britta's way too worldly for you." Troy's a grown ass man. And Britta's a good person. Yeah.
Like,
Okay,
that's
so
my beef with this episode is Troy's, like, being treated like he's never dated anyone, he's never hooked up with anyone, but, like, they
He was a jock in high school. He was doing keg flips and stuff.
I think that is less of a lack of Troy's character development and more addressing Shirley's character as she wants to be, like, especially to the young black boy in their study group. Like, she's going to extra be them. Like, she's the mother to everyone in the group. She's extra the mother to Troy.
And it's been established.
First paintball episode,
that
I am not an ambassador.
She judges Britta, so like she's. It's not like she's coming out of left field for that. She's like she already just makes assumptions about Britta. I was just rewatching Cooperative Calligraphy. Like you listen to the way she talks about Britta's like sex life, so it's like pretty on par with how Shirley would address Troy as a person.
Yeah.
But I guess the Troy.
I think it's the way Troy acts, especially because this was pointed out to me recently, and it's part of why this episode dropped a ton in my rankings watching this. It's like towards the bottom for me, and it's not because it's bad. It's just because it's not that funny compared to some of the others. Yeah. And I felt like just weird out of character things like Troy, just like, I don't think he, like the next episode, him and Britta are waking up in bed together.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they're not, like, I thought, like, and, you know, Basic Human Anatomy, it's more about him not being ready for a relationship, not him being afraid to have sex with her. Like, it's like, that seems to be the more in character way of dealing with his, lack of experience versus hers and like the age gap and everything rather than
most of the times we see them in bed.
Oh, he's a baby and he doesn't know what sex is.
Like, they're like always in bed together when we see them as a couple. Yeah. They're in bed together when Abed doesn't know. They're in bed together watching the commercial. Like, it's no secret that they
checks out their relationship.
Well, exactly, yeah.
I'm just in my head
the awful fountain
the inconsistent writing. Like that's again another kind of pointing like. It's on par because of the way that Troy is like, I mean, the stuff he says in that episode, it's pretty on par with what Troy says in most episodes. I think it's only out of character because it feels inconsistent with how Troy is written, which goes back to the same problem we have with Abed. Like Abed, one episode, there's no necessarily arc that happens in season 4, so all the characters have starts and stops and spurts, and there's some things they try and thread, but it doesn't have the space to grow. Like Troy's absurdity, Troy and Britta's relationship is just only presented by what we hear from other characters, like, or what we assume based on what other characters are talking about. So in this instance, it's like, it would make sense that Troy, who does not understand so many things, like doesn't know who Billy Joel is, says laser disc, like he think like those kinds of things of his character seem consistent, but it is weird when you put him in context of a relationship that should have been fleshed out as an arc and feel like it but it doesn't make sense because we don't see their relationship. So
in my head, Troy thinks sex is kissing with your eyes closed.
Butt stuff.
Given any explicit,
but then why would he need to know where the cleanest bathroom on campus is?
There you go.
Because he's very hygienic. He cares about cleanliness. We were assuming the worst of Troy Barnes.
Like, I'm not saying that Troy is Jeff, but like Troy is like out there. Like he's maybe not having adult relationships, but he's having adult relationships. You know, I mean, like,
I'm just saying. I don't think Troy's. I still think that Troy could like not know what the adult gym was. Like, I think he could have sex and then also not know what the adult gym was.
Okay, fair
because
enough.
Because he is like
yeah.
He's
also,
a child.
Annie didn't know what it was either, and that's also been established. Like, she has had sex, maybe she doesn't have a lot of experience, but also same kind of thing. Like, they had the similar vibe. It's like more of like, oh, they're younger.
The guy who's that into butt stuff
I buy that Troy is really like,
they don't know how to write character development consistently, Ed. That's the problem. They don't know how to write these characters from episode to episode.
And just like Troy sucks. All right, this is well established. I don't like a whole episode
they're like,
about
but
how
does
he
he
doesn't.
though?
Like, come on.
Speaking
Sorry,
of,
I've been shitting on your favorite episode of the season. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I do love this episode.
well, in defense of this episode, and speaking of Annie, Bo was right. They do have some like scary images when Annie's doing the whole like ring crawl thing.
Pretty freaky.
That shit's pretty
huh?
damn scary. Yeah.
The ring
remember
girl
how
gag
she
is
said
really
they
like
bad.
filmed it.
Slowed it
I
down.
think they did
like, sped it
backwards
up
or something.
She did.
backwards,
She said that they filmed it backwards. Sorry, I said she. Megan said that they filmed it backwards, and that was how you got that little. There's some nice little hidden gems and things like that. Anyway, this will come up on mine, so I'll talk about it. Sure.
Well, that was all 4 of mine. So whoever's next,
Oh.
popcorn, Stephen.
All right. So I will say, Parentage got shit on there quite a bit, but that was almost my number 4 in my top. It was very close. I had a few too many issues with it for it to land there, but I do think it's one of the better episodes of the season. My number 4 actually ended up being Conventions of Space and Time. I think there's a lot about that episode that I don't enjoy, but it is probably one of my favorite depictions of Troy and Britta's relationship. Mostly just because I think Britta was being very mature the whole episode and
Very
was,
supportive of Troy that episode.
yeah, being extremely supportive of Troy, which I love to see, which I think continues throughout the season that she is supportive of Troy, and I'll get a little more on that in a second. But I think that I don't really like the Annie and Jeff plotline. I don't like the Thoraxis thing at the end. I don't even really like all of the, getting locked in the phone booth stuff. But what I will say is the emotional weight that the Troy and Abed friendship carries for me throughout the show did touch me enough in the episode for it to get a spot in my top. My number 3, cooperative escapism and familial relations, I think is really funny. Love the Shawshank stuff. I think the narration in the garage is really, really funny. And the Jeff stuff it has a lot of heart. I think Adam Devine was really funny as a guest star in the episode, and I think Britta playing off of him was really enjoyable. And sometimes it's good to have an episode where you meet the dad, and the dad is not some he secretly was longing for Jeff and this and that. And I think it was important for Jeff to kind of be okay with that door being maybe closed but unlocked, so that he could revisit if he wanted to, but also know he didn't have to. And I think that was important and one of the better Jeff storylines to this point in the show. My number 2, Herstory of Dance. Love this episode. This is when I was watching this season was one of my favorite episodes of Community. I thought it was so funny. I think that the joke of the episode of the Susan B. Hawkins dance, Sadie B. Hawkins dance is so
Sophie B. Hawkins.
funny.
No,
Sophie B. Yeah, Sophie. I can't ever say it. Sophie B. Hawkins is so funny. I can just laugh about the plot. Just that alone is enough for me to put it in my top. I think it's a great episode. I love the Abed storyline in it. We get to see Abed being a human being and being flirty and jokey with someone, and I think that's great. And my favorite of the season is Basic Human Anatomy. I think it's really funny. I know that's not Bo's favorite, and I do see the issues with it, and I understand them, but I think that the performances that the actors deliver in that one is so funny. I actually think Britta was my MVP for that episode, which Zach and I differed on that front, but I love Britta in that episode. I think she does a great job of being supportive for Troy and seeing that something's wrong. And, at first, of course, she's trying to therapize Abed, as she often does. But in the end, I think that it has a result that I'm okay with. I had high hopes for the Troy-Britta relationship going in. And I think that if they were going to end it, that was the way that it worked fine for me. I mean, obviously it's not perfect, but it was my favorite of the season. It had a lot of heart. And I think it also showed a lot of growth in Abed to be there for his best friend in that way and be willing to feign, it also showed that they have a deeper connection than we see. They're not just always goofing around. They have, conversations where Troy confides in Abed. It's I'm having a tough time with this. And Abed, seeing that, kind of steps up to the plate to help it out. Is it the most mature thing in the world? No. But they're not the most mature guys in the world, and I think I enjoyed the episode quite a bit. My favorite of the season. Popcorn. Ed.
Okay. So yeah, mine is a pretty similar list there. So at my number 4, like I said before, I tiered these things, and my solid attempt at community tier, everything is kind of all interchangeable. Like I could swap these around a lot. So I chose advanced documentary filmmaking at my 4. Because I feel like just a lot of these episodes, like Heroic Origins was up there, Felt Surrogacy for me was up there, Intro to Knots, a few others. I felt like they were like, obviously they missed the mark on what they could have done. Like it was a missed opportunity in a lot of ways, but there was still a lot of good jokes. And of these kind of middle of the pack ones, I think I preferred the ones that just made me laugh more, because if I was going to be underwhelmed by the story, the characters, and the jokes, at least the jokes can stand on their own the most, you know? So I think the documentary episode is a good example of that, because Chang Nija is a great example of something that doesn't, like, as a story, it goes nowhere. For the character of Chang, it really does nothing, and they basically erase it at the start of the next season. But they got jokes for it. Like, it's got some good jokes.
Sure.
And Partner and Houlihan, I love that pairing.
Sexually assaulting someone in that episode when he
Okay,
straight up
look,
kisses
I'm not
Chang's
saying
wife.
there's a lot I don't like in that episode, and we already talked about the Pierce bit, which I would just cut out completely.
Oh my
like,
God.
I don't like
That's
that stuff.
episode,
I'm not defending
isn't
it.
Yeah.
But I'm not defending it.
That's
There's a
why I
lot
didn't
not to
remember
like.
it.
No, honestly,
Yeah.
I remember that episode mostly for the trout farmer, and
Yeah.
that whole scene.
fucking
On the
icon.
last face,
I
a
thought
lot of
he
these
was-
trouts.
of the last
yeah.
scene, a lot of trout scene. That, and then him yelling,
great.
"Just shut up, Kevin!" And then Troy looking, partner.
Yeah. Well, and Troy's joke about having a dog and a fish and a cat named
All
Troy,
named Troy.
that were
Yeah.
all older than him, is one of my favorite Troy
That's
jokes, and I
really
forget it's
funny.
from season 4, because it's like, that's something I'm always like, oh, that was the season 1 or 2 or
That
3
does
joke,
paint a
right?
picture.
Yeah, no, but that to me is like core to understanding his character, and it's in this episode.
The video,
But then,
of just Chang's head, like him smiling while he just spins his head around.
Oh, when they have like all the crystals on his chest is also pretty
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good jokes in that.
Ken
and
is
Heroic
never what's
Origins
wrong
came
with
really
the
close there.
Changnisha
No.
part.
Oh, no.
Ken
Ken
is
is never
so
what's wrong with
good. He's
Chang.
so
It's-
funny no matter what they give him.
Chang.
Yeah, it's
Just
it's
them
literally
not
just
knowing what to do.
I do not buy at all that even in the world of Greendale that these
They
people
believe
are
it.
buying his bullshit.
See, I'm pushing back on that. I think
Okay,
that's
that's fine.
completely believable for
Okay.
Greendale, because
Of
no, seriously,
Greendale, but not
because-
of the study group.
Well, no, but that's why I like this episode. In terms of the Chang explain, like, this is the Changnesia episode, right?
Yes.
Like, it's in other episodes, but this is the one that really focuses on it. And what I like is that it shows that, like, there's always, you kind of can tell whether or not they're saying it. That most of the people who are believing it are like believing it conditionally, like, whatever. This
Okay.
is safer. This is
like virtue
if Chang
signaling.
just wants to call himself Kevin,
Yeah.
and not blow up the school, we'll roll with it. Let's because this is, let's encourage this because it's better than what came before. And like, I think this like, they don't care about the grant, like, or they don't care about the research. They care about the grant money. Like that, no one really cares about Changnesia. Like it's
Sure.
it's a safer way to keep Chang around, and it's some money the school could earn. Like, so I
Okay,
believe it on
okay.
that level. Like they're not actually like, Jeff is the only one who's like, I don't believe it, and it pisses me off that he's doing it. Like, and he's the jerk for acting like that. Everyone else is like, who cares if he's telling the truth?
Yeah.
Like, this is still better. And like, even Chang, and the fact that they all treat him rather nicely as Kevin means he doesn't betray them at the end of the season, which is like one of the
Sure.
threads that they do, I think, follow up on in a good way. But then my top 3 from the season are in my genuinely good community category. I would put all 3 of these up there against the best of other seasons, and it's the same as Steven's. Cooperative Escapism at 3, Herstory at 2, and Basic Human Anatomy at 1. Basic Human Anatomy was the one that really leapt up to the top for me watching it this time. It was always towards the top, but like I really loved that episode. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the one Jim Rash wrote.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Academy
I was,
Award winner, Jim Rash.
Yeah. And I feel you can tell that it was written by someone who's been there from the beginning of the show. Like the way Bo, in your criticism of it, you were saying that you felt like Britta wouldn't really go along with all this. Or maybe I misheard you.
I might have said Britta wouldn't go along with all of this. I guess I should have said, if I were Britta, I wouldn't go along with all of this.
Yeah.
Britta in the show, it checks out. Like, I never saw that as like, oh, this is out of character for Britta. It was just self-inserting. I'm like, F this.
Because what really warmed this episode up to me was the fact that everyone, including even Jeff at the end, sees why they're doing it, and it's so touching that it's because they realize that it's not Abed, it's Troy. Like, it's not just another one of Abed doing Abed things.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's in the same way geothermal escapism really hits, when you realize, like, that one's still Abed doing an Abed thing, but you realize it's, like, not him just... It's not, you know... he has to do it. Like, it adds that extra layer to it, and I think this episode, by shifting it to Troy, also adds that layer to it.
Yeah,
well said.
And I think Troy does a better. I think Donald Glover does a better Danny Pudi than Danny Pudi does Donald Glover, but they both give fun attempts. And I also just Freaky Friday body swapping things are just, that's a trope I love. I love actors just pretending to be their co-stars. That's, anytime you can give me that, I'm on board. So top tier episode all around, I think.
I'll go ahead and go. I'll do mine. My top 4. The 4 spot was the hardest because it's not one of my absolute favorite episodes, but those couple that are pretty good, that have good ideas, just not fully great execution. So I went with Heroic Origins, mainly because I like seeing the study group differently than how we're used to seeing them, whether it's a little contrived or not. I like seeing Jock, Troy again. I have a lot of issues with the depiction of Annie's drug usage. I think it's something that tweaked a little bit, could have been much more meaningful. I don't really like the visual of her like popping pills and that kind of like the sexual assault line. It's
played
kind of just
for
a joke.
Jokes. Yeah, like it's her drug addiction is literally always just played for jokes.
And you can make jokes about it, but it has to be levied with how serious it also is, you know, kind of like how it's funny when Pierce is an arrogant asshole when everyone's like, what are you saying? But then in episodes where Jeff is playing along with them, that's not funny anymore. That's just being hateful and no other side to it. I forget where I was going with that point. I like some things about Heroic Origins. I even kind of buy that Chang handing out flyers to everybody was what got them to Greendale, even if I don't quite buy them all being in the same place at the same time. But whatever, I like some of the stuff that episode dabbles in. Number 3, all 3 of my top episodes I think are really, really good episodes of Community. Number 3 being Cooperative Escapism. I think the Jeff dad stuff is handled really, really well in a way that I think only season 4's Hard on Its Sleeve could have done that successfully. Steven, I think you said beautifully about how they let Jeff cross that thing off of his list without it being like, oh, now he's a great dad, or even he's this asshole. It's just sometimes it just didn't work out for, like, I don't know. You said it way better than I could. I think that was great. But I do really like that episode. I like the subplot a lot. Really funny. I like that we see Shirley's house and her family. Yeah.
Real quick, I like that Jeff's dad was not a guest star.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm apologize if the actor is like big outside.
Oh no, he is.
Well, that's
that's a big
James
Golden.
Okay,
he's
They
married to Barbra
wanted
Streisand.
it to be they wanted it to be Bill Murray. That was the thing, or Dan wanted it to be Bill Murray, or imagined Bill Murray being.
And they got Thanos' dad, so that's
Oh shit! No, I totally knew this. Yeah, no. Okay, all right. I'll shut up. I'm muting myself. I'm sorry. Please continue. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's
not as obvious.
5 minutes of time out.
I mean, to your credit, like the
time
Bill
out.
Murray thing, like makes sense. Like would have been like kind of like the fan casty way of doing it.
Yeah.
This felt more.
This
like,
felt more authentic and.
Yeah.
His dad was just a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though it is a celebrity get, the Bill Murray thing would have been a little different.
We would have been so focused on it being Bill Murray.
Overshadowed it entirely. Yeah. I will say my biggest criticism with this episode is that they don't follow up on it in any meaningful way. And I'm not saying I needed his dad to come back. In fact, I think it's better he didn't. But like at least like he has a half brother. Like I feel like that's pretty. Like they could have found some funny ways to bring Adam Devine back in. Like
he could have enrolled at Greendale.
Could they have?
Yeah, like
I don't know. I just think
big,
there's a really
interesting
interesting line drawn with that idea of dad really up the first time with the first family and then gets remarried, has this stepson, and then all of a sudden is that dad that he never. I feel like that's an interesting.
No, I like that. I just like for how significant this episode is and how much build up there was.
Sure.
In this, it's just odd to me that
It
I mean,
never
it's
came
part
back
of
in
just
shore.
it's part of it being in season 4, right? They're not going to call back to it unless it has Brie Larson's in it. So they're like, yeah, I guess it's just that. Really.
And then my top 2 were so close that I almost thought my 2 was my 1, but I put number 2 as Basic Human Anatomy, mainly because how good that episode is doesn't justify how much they squander Troy and Britta's relationship throughout the rest of the season. I was all for them getting together, honestly, out of all the ships, because they had just this cute, flirty, just like hints of stuff all throughout the first couple seasons that I was interested to see where they took it. And then likewise in History 101, that fountain scene is just dreadful. And then the rest of the season, they keep pairing up Britta with Jeff, and they don't let Britta and Troy be together. And that's another
I'll talk about that in a little bit.
There's some bad lines about Jeff being like, I bet you really want to have sex with me right now, and or that too. I don't know. I don't think it makes up for the issues, but it is a good episode, and it ends that relationship about as well as they could. I do love whoever said so beautifully about how it is Troy needing this from Abed rather than Abed needing this out of everybody else. I really, really like that. And then my number 1, I went with History of Dance just because I don't have any qualms with it other than I wish it was like 10 minutes longer and we could have like more of the of Britta versus the Dean trying to make 2 different dances and stuff like that. I think like Steven said, that joke at the front of the episode is so funny, is so Community, and it's also a real nice kind of low-key hang out at the school episode. I really like that one. It's perfect. Maybe even top 25 of the series for me.
God
like that would be a
bless.
standout season 1 episode. Like that would be one of my favorites in season 1, if not.
Yeah.
Well,
who's left, just Jen?
Let's wrap this stuff up with
this.
things
Bring
that
us
you've
home.
heard already.
Yeah.
So number 4 is cooperative escapism. For all the reasons you've said, we actually get a Shirley story. Joel's delivery of Jeff's monologue to his dad is one of my favorite Joel speeches in the show. I think he does such a great job of making it so understated and so emotional at the same time. I think he always gets underutilized because he doesn't have a lot of those sometimes in the show, but I thought that one was just exceptional. Number 3 is Basic Human Anatomy. Again, for all of the reasons that y'all have said, I actually was guesting on a podcast where we were talking about Donald Glover, and I brought this to them because they had never watched Community, so it's talked me into. They talked me into. It's a talk me into. They were doing a Donald Glover miniseries, so it's like pick some of the best Donald Glover episodes. I picked this one because I do think that Donald's performance as Danny is so nuanced, so beautiful, so really like not a cheap imitation either, which I feel like is what sometimes could happen. I liken it to the way that Darcy Carden did Janet's, where she knew her co-stars.
What a star, by the way.
So
Great.
like, oh my gosh. So she
plus.
knew the nuances, like even just the way that that Danny makes himself bigger in scenes and Donald makes himself closed in. His hands are closer to his chest, whereas Danny takes up more space because that's what Troy would do.
Yeah.
Everything, the emotional heart of it too, that speech that he gives and Jeff realizing that this is serious. I think that the emotional heart. I will say the only problem I have some problems with the Troy and Britta stuff because, as you said, it wasn't built up. The thing I have most problems with as I was rewatching.
Are you about to see the Dean? Are you about to say the Dean?
No,
I was worried you were going to say you don't
sorry.
like the Dean part.
No, oh no, that's fine. It's really funny. I think that whole runner is
Super
just
funny.
so hilarious. Academy Award winner Jim Rash. No, the problem I have with the Troy and Britta stuff is that for the reasons that you said, the build up, the lead out. But if you really think about it, every single episode we've talked about that focuses on Troy and Britta really is about Troy and Abed. Conventions of Space and Time has nothing to do with Troy and Britta. This episode, really not Troy and Britta. They don't spend a lot of time together. No. It's Troy and Abed in a Troy and Britta frame that we're it's the telling us, but they're together, and I'm like, yeah, you keep telling us that, but like, are they though? Like, are they dating? So that's the biggest kind of glaring issue with their relationship for me is like, their whole relationship is really just Troy and Abed stories. And so number 2, I am going with Paranormal Parentage because I think it has so many great gags, so many great side gags. There's just so much to glean. I love the pairings. I think that the Jeff and Britta story works super well. I think Britta has some of the funniest comedic moments in that ham costume, which Megan Gans wore to a party at like a Hollywood party. So listen to our Paranormal Parentage episode to hear the story about that.
It's been floating around on eBay for years. I don't know.
Somebody bought it.
Did somebody buy it?
Yeah, somebody finally bought it. And so you also wore it when Megan wore it to Adam Levine's Halloween party or something.
Nice.
I just think that it has a great use of all of the characters and different pairings than we're used to seeing. And there's one particular moment we talked about in my episode, but like Troy and Annie have a nice little scene where he's like, hey, like I want you to like talk to me. Like I want to feel like comfortable talking to me. And that was nice to see because they are roommates. Like it's nice to acknowledge that they have a relationship and they're friends, which we don't always see. So I liked all of the different things. I like that Shirley didn't have an ambiguous costume this year. I thought that was great. And my number one is Herstory of Dance. I literally have no qualms with this episode. I think it is a perfect episode. Yeah. I think that Pierce is utilized so well. That speech that Pierce gives to Jeff is maybe one of, if not my favorite Pierce moment of the entire series, because they found a way to use him in a way that was sincere and also Jeff, I really do believe all the characters grew. Abed has emotions and romance, and Academy Award winner Brie Larson is in it. Like, come on. Like, what? So I loved that we got episode. It's such a great episode. So fun. As we were rewatching it, I was rewatching season 4, and I was like, this is it. This is my favorite episode of the season because it is flawless to me. So that is my number one pick.
That episode has my favorite line in this entire season, which is at the end when Britta pulls off the dance and the dean goes, according to Dean Law. It's now
it's one of the funniest line deliveries I have ever heard.
No, that is like a top 5 all-time Community.
Chels quoted that when we did this. She's like, that's my favorite quote in this entire episode.
That and the Troy pet name thing are 2 lines where I'm like, those like stand above this season to me on such a high level, regardless of the episodes they're in.
Just even though I didn't include this in my top 4, I do really like this episode. But something that I didn't realize that Pierce very easily could have been and I'm sorry to bring up It's Always Sunny again, but like he very easily could have and frankly kind of should have been the Frank Reynolds, where you have the out of touch, physically slower, older character with a lot of money that can get you into whatever hijinks you want. Like
they don't use Pierce to create the hijinks ever, almost.
Yeah, so obviously if bring back Community now and I'll help, but like missed opportunity with that entire character. I just realized I didn't know that I wanted that until now.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That could have been funny.
If they do bring it back, Troy will have all of his money. So, like,
so Troy can
do that. Yeah, Troy was the Frank Reynolds, exactly.
And talking about the writing that stood out to you, that's one thing that I noticed a lot about season 4. I was expecting it to feel so much more out of character of the show than what it truly does. I feel like the characters still speak in their voices. It doesn't feel like it's being written by people who don't know how these characters tick. It's mainly more my issues have to do with the types of stories that they're telling this season, the types of homage type things they try to pull off and don't quite pull off. I was really impressed with the job that they did of keeping the hearts of these characters throughout this season. And I think that can segue into picking an MVP for the season. Because at the end of every episode, Steven and I like to award an MVP for each episode. And at the end of the season, I like to look at who we gave the most to and if that lines up with who we kind of feel the MVP of the season is. So who wants to start off with that? Who's got an MVP for the season?
Bo?
Only because I know that mine won't win. The board members, Frank and Richie. That's it.
Wait, do they? What are they?
They're in the whale episode.
Documentary?
The whale episode.
They are in the whale episode.
And they show up like real sloppy on their yard marks from Skeepers.
Are you drunk? Good luck proving it before we're not. To me, that's the best line of the season. And I know that won't count, but that's my vote.
Those are great characters. Something that season 5 and 6 do really well is keep bringing them back and letting them get weirder and weirder and weirder.
You're always special, Richie.
Britta Perry is my MVP for the season. For her story of dance, obviously for cooperative escapism. I feel like obviously Britta as a therapist gets used as a joke, but I really do feel like Britta does so much good in this season. And one of my favorite things is when Britta unintentionally helps people. Like she unintentionally helps Jeff. And I really love that we got a chance to see Britta have a win too. That's why I love her story of dance, is because Pierce berates Jeff and is like, let her have a win. Like, just let her have this. Let her be happy.
That is such a great moment.
It really is. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Like, and so I really do love that we get a chance to see Britta grow, and we really get to see a lot of her. And I love her in this season. I feel like there's a lot of other seasons where they don't really know how to write her, and I have qualms later on of what happens to her.
Absolutely.
But this season, I feel like is a really solid, she has a really solid journey.
They do a good job of taking her more seriously without totally losing the kind of punching bag that she's become. Because even in her story of dance, she kind of she gets a win, but she has very, very little to do with what happens. And,
for sure.
And I like that she deserves to be treated differently by the group. Yeah. She doesn't have to prove that she is worthy of better treatment from her friends. Yeah, and I really like how they handle all of that.
I love that the lesson is for not that Britta is the insult, the make a tiny mistake, that it's Jeff is learning why are you being so terrible to someone you are supposed to be friends with? That's the lesson you need to learn. And Britta, and that's where Pierce's speech of she acts this way because y'all do this to her all the time. How else do you think she's gonna act? You treat her name to mean making a mistake. So I love that we get to see her be taken more seriously, have more stories with characters, and actually have those silly moments, but they're ultimately rooted in the other characters being we see you, Britta, we love you, not oh haha, Britta's so dumb, which
totally
happens a lot in the show.
I'll piggyback off of that and give mine. It's kind of hard to pick in this season because it's shorter, because there's so much going on, and any character that kind of has a thread through the season, they pick it up and they throw it away all the time. So I think I'm going to go with Jeff, just because at the very least this season is Jeff is going to get his shit together and graduate early, and he's going to help the group that he's built be prepared to survive without him. And then at the end of the season, that's pretty much the only thing that I think they satisfyingly wrap up for the series, is that the study group can go on without Jeff, and that Jeff can leave Greendale in theory and not just be a conniving son of a bitch again, that he can have learned a lot from this experience. And my answer is it's Jeff unenthusiastically.
Ed, what about you?
I'm with Jenn on this. I think it's Britta, and I think for everything you said, and I'll just add that I think what makes her the MVP, what really cements her as the MVP for me, is the fact that the kind of upbeat tone of this season that we've talked a bit about kind of makes Britta work better. And so I feel there might be other seasons where she's the MVP, but this is the one where she there's more of a mutual relationship between her and the season. She's funny and brings the season up, but also the season being what it is improves Britta and her role in the show. She's been Charlie Brown. She's been the the sad sack punching bag whatever character since season one. I mean, since halfway through season one. I mean, that they may have a whole episode about her being a buzzkill in that season, and they keep rolling with that. But with especially as things get darker and more bitter in season 5 and 6, it becomes just meaner and meaner. This is where it feels like it has the best balance, even including the first 3 seasons of she's a buzzkill sometimes, and she f***s up a lot, and she Britta's things, but she also Britta's things in the other way. You know? You have her story of dance. I don't know. I think you wouldn't be able to have that in a Harmon season.
I agree.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Britta was my season MVP for my heart too. She's the, a very integral piece of all of my favorite episodes and all my favorite moments of the season. And I think, like you guys were saying, she just does they finally take her seriously this season, and they, she's always the punching bag. Like you said, I think saying that Britta was the Charlie Brown of the group is such a good analogy because she constantly was like trying to do things and like trying to step up and like help, and like it was all coming from a good place, even if it was misguided. But
the football gets taken away every time.
Yeah, a lot of the time by Jeff, I feel like,
Yeah.
but just yanking it out and but it was.
And
nice
I've been
to
saying
see
since
Britta
we
get
started
some
this
more
podcast
wins.
that Abed's Snoopy. So this
Yeah, it's
analogy
true.
tracks.
I know. I was literally in my head like connecting all the characters to different
Yeah.
Peanuts characters.
Yeah. I would love to take credit for it, but it's something Dan Harmon says like in the season 1 commentaries when they
that's
get
great.
to like they're like, no, they made the conscious decision to make her Charlie Brown. Like that was
Wow.
that was very much the intent. So I don't know about the other Peanuts characters mapping onto that. But Britta as Charlie Brown is very much textual.
Yeah.
As far as the ones we give out over the season, though, Steven, that's not how it shook
Yeah,
out.
I want to know how it did. Did it? Was it Abed?
So, like, individually, I gave the most to Abed by far, and you gave the most to Abed as well. Abed, both of us, we gave the most to, which I feel like is
Wow.
weird, because I think season 4 is kind of sleepy mode Abed,
Yeah.
where, like, they
Yeah.
don't get him wrong, but
I think
I don't
he
know
had a
how it
strong
ended up
end to
that
the
way.
season, and that's how that happened.
I
He
think
must
it
have gotten a bunch in a
often
row.
ended up that he was one of the characters in each episode that we didn't have any complaints about. Like, everybody else was like, well, we
By
liked him, but they
default.
did this.
Because I
Yeah.
think
Abed
even in like
wins.
Intro to Knots, I gave my MVP to Abed, and
Yeah.
he just does Die Hard,
Yeah.
kind of.
He doesn't really do much in that
No,
episode
he
because
doesn't.
everyone else is so terrible that it's like by
Yeah.
default Abed didn't do anything bad,
Yes.
so he's
I can't give this
He's,
arbitrary award to somebody that did something bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it came about,
it's a
but I think Britta's a good
participation
answer.
trophy.
I
That's
think a lot of
basically
people
what
would
it
say
is.
Britta.
Second, Zach.
I think it was like Jeff and Britta. It was a tie between Jeff and Britta. Yeah, interesting.
Wow.
I think this season did well by pretty much all the main cast members except for Pierce and Annie. I felt were
No,
Yeah,
don't get
Annie's, like,
started
real
on
left
Annie.
out.
we talked a lot about we talked a bit about Shirley having more to do this season. I think Jeff, there's some hit or miss stuff, but ultimately has some huge steps. Like we were saying,
Yeah.
Abed, I agree, is like, he's still Abed, and he was my kind of like my honorable mention. I think I hadn't really thought about it like that hard, but I think it is because he's like good in a lot of episodes and there but not bad in other ones.
Like the
Really,
Delta
he just
Cubes
sits
plot
there and says one line.
Yeah.
The Delta
like,
Cubes
I've
was the
known
best
MVP
part
in
of
that
that
one, too.
nothing episode. Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much everyone, even if they have like some of their worst moments in this season, they also have some of their best. And Britta, I think, doesn't really even have much that I would say is like bad. I think this is her best season possibly overall.
I agree.
Well, let's wrap this thing up. We've proven that, like, once you take the lid off of the season 4 talk, that it's hard to put it back on. There's so many abstract thoughts, good and bad, about it, and I feel like we got a lot of the good stuff out. Before we leave, does anybody have anything they want to plug? Anything they want to point people towards? Obviously, of course, each of your podcasts, Save Greendale Committee and the Community Rewatch Podcast. Anybody have anything they want to put out there? AP Bio
AP Bio
Podcast, sure.
Podcast.
By the time this comes out, we'll have like 2 episodes left, so go check it out while you still can, I guess.
Well, this was really fun. Thanks, everybody, for coming and hanging out with us. And I look forward to diving into Season 5. And that'll be a tricky thing to dive into as well, with the return of Dan Harmon and the bleakening of the entire show. I actually quite enjoy Season 5. I think it's one. It seems like a hot take, but it's one of my favorite seasons. I think it goes
I'm a Buzz Hickey
gonzo in a
truther,
great way.
so.
I love
I
Buzz
think
Hickey.
Oh gosh,
I-
see, I
Buzz
can't
Hickey is
stand
my-
Buzz Hickey.
Oh my god!
Interesting.
I think I like the first
he's my
half.
I
favorite
fought
new
for this
edition.
country. See, I almost feel like to an extent. So it has amazing episodes in the first half, but I almost
think it's, like,
it reaches a nice stasis
post.
when Donald leaves. I think it kind of is in a way good for the show to like get it out of the way.
I have a hot take.
Okay,
I don't
well
love the
that's
way
a
the
conversation
season
for another
ends, but
time.
yeah.
I have a hot take.
Oh
about
yeah,
that.
the 2-part season finale is rough. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's bad. It's
Well, anyway, this has been fun. Now we're all good and stressed out about this show that we're supposed to all love so desperately.
It's
I don't
This has
love
been
it
a lot of
anymore.
fun.
Yeah.
That's the character. That's Bo's character development.
Yeah, my character
I don't-
arc over
Longer
the
a
course
fan
of this
community.
this
like,
podcast, I
no
no
longer.
longer like Community or Dan Harmon.
I feel like you should say if we didn't love it,
Or
we
myself.
wouldn't spend 2 hours talking about it.
Yeah.
Talking
right?
about
Yeah.
the worst season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
All right, well, thanks for doing this. This was fun.
Yeah,
and
thanks
I'm
guys
gonna
for
go ahead.
coming
thank
on.
you.
Appreciate
Sign
having
us
you
off.
all on.
Thanks so much.
All right, Steven, wasn't that just so much fun? I love having our podcaster friends with us. If I think too hard about it, I get all tripped out about how cool it is, the people that we've met, the connections that we've made, that we can get together with these people and talk to them like old friends, even though we only met them through podcasting. And at this point, it's been a couple years, and they kind of are old friends. It's cool.
Yeah, it's wild. You know, and Ed was one of the first people that we ever interacted with.
One of our first, the cool kids at the podcasting table, for sure.
So it's cool to, have Ed and Bo and Jenn here with us. They're awesome. And
it always feels like it brings some validity to what we're doing here to have. Even though we do the same thing, I look to them as people to look up to.
Sure.
In this space.
And it's so nice to hear voices other than yours.
Yeah, I bet. I'm not used to having to make an effort to get a word in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But guys, don't you want to put my opinion?
But yeah, that was great. I'm really happy they could join
fun.
us. And Zach, it's nice that we can open our bungalow entrance and invite in a couple other rascals to roll around in the hay with us for a little bit.
Do you have any last words about season 4 before we put it to bed? We've said a lot about it. I think it's easy to have that bad taste in your mouth at the end of it, but I think there is a lot of good to season 4. I think there's a lot of warm, heartfelt moments, and there is still a lot of great time spent with these characters that we love, even if it's not perfect.
And I think that I needed this talk to relive the good and the bad to get kind of the taste that I had.
The finale out of our mouths. The finale is just
and
bad.
I think some of my favorite moments of the show happen in season 4, and I'm glad that it exists in the way it does so that we can appreciate the parts that are better and worse of the show for it. So
I agree with you. And I'm even more excited and trepidatious to get into season 5 because I don't really know what to expect now. I know that it's going to be darker. It's going to be bleaker. Dan Harmon's back. Troy's almost gone. We feel just because season 4 and all of its trouble is over does not mean that there's not a lot to dive into in the 26 episodes we have left to cover, which is insane. The amount of Community that we have left to cover is only one episode more than the first season, number of episodes.
That's crazy.
This thing is going to be done before we know it. And next week, we're trucking right along, diving into the first episode of season 5. That is the repilot, so send us in some trivia. Steven's really doing when you drive past a semi and you yank your arm to make it honk. Nobody can see that you're doing that.
You can see it, Zach. Give me a honk.
I can see it. Honk, honk. Everyone, next week we're talking repilot. Send us in your trivia, your episode MVP, and your favorite funny moment to can'tdisappointpodcast@gmail.com to get into the conversation on that one so we can read it out on the show. Steven, where else can the people find us before we sign this season off?
You can honk your way over to Twitter and find us over at You Can't Disapod. We're also on Instagram. Find us at Can't Disappoint Podcast. We're also on YouTube and the Facebook under the whole name of the show, You Can't Disappoint a Podcast. Mm-hmm.
Well said. Steven, thank you for doing this podcast with me. I love doing it with you.
Hey, I love doing it with
love
you,
what this
buddy.
does for our friendship. I love this little thing that we've built here. It means a lot. And it's always warm, fuzzy feelings at the end of the season as we kind of get to take a step back and look at the type of stuff we've done. So thanks for that. Thanks to everyone for being a part of it. Shout out to our guests one more time. Make sure to check out Jenn on the Community Rewatch Podcast, Ed and Bo on the Save Greendale Committee, and Ed along with Matt and Alex, who are voices I'm sure you know if you listen to our show, over on the AP Bio Podcast. That's all a lot of good stuff. And to wrap things up here, from inside the Dreamatorium, Black Lives Matter. I want to throw out a Trans Lives Matter because shit's going down in Texas. It's all kinds of f***ed up, and we love our trans friends, and we hope that you're hanging in there, and I hope I hope that some shit gets figured out. And also a shout out to the people living in the Ukraine. Being on social media, you literally see people post people are having to leave their animals because they can't take them with them as they evacuate, and all kinds of crazy shit. It's insane to think that it
dance
is
world,
really
I know
happening.
a lot of people who are from Ukraine, and they're definitely going through a tough time right now, worrying about their families, and it's scary, f***ed up shit. So
but there is a lot of warmth and love in the world, and we sure have got a lot of it for you. So hang in there and watch a couple episodes of Community to take the edge off. We'll be back next week. I guess we didn't say our names. I am Zach, but if you didn't know that already, what the is wrong with you?
And I'm Steven, obviously.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Thanks for hanging out.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.